are live. I'm Andy Andrews. You've joined us here on the Blue Plate Special. And this is the Thanksgiving edition. We're here at Wisdom Harbor Studios in beautiful downtown Orange Beach, Alabama, high atop the wharf, home of the world-famous escalator statues. Make sure you have your picture taken on them if you visit, and come visit us sometime. We're here today with the studio audience and the thousands of people gathered around for our Thanksgiving reading. That's right, I'm going to read you stories today. Hey, if you're new to us and you're on Facebook, please click that notification button there and turn the notifications on your phone, so that way when we go live, you'll be notified. And share. Okay, please. Sharing is caring. And we're going to do this great Thanksgiving show for you. So just right down there, just click the share button and share this to your page. And even if you're watching this later, you can share this to your page so that your friends can have stories read to them too. Okay? If you're on YouTube, we're glad you're here. Please click that subscribe. You LinkedIn people, we are honored that you would join us. Just loosen your tie and have a good time here. And the Twitter people with your Captain Brian Backen. We're glad you're here. You like the shirt? The shirt is a Sand Dollar shirt from Sand Dollar Lifestyles, right here, the cornerstone of the wharf. It's this is an awesome store. I mean, I tease a lot, but this is truly an awesome store. And so if you're in town, save yourself 45 minutes to walk through that store. It's everything you could ever want. I mean, cars, fur coats, not really. It's t-shirts and shoes and casual wear, grills. They do have a lot of stuff, and it is a huge, great store. And we appreciate Sand Dollar providing our shirts. Patricia Clapp, we're glad to have you here today. Diane Hale, good afternoon. Big Bob Woodall from Dothan, Alabama. Call Bob. Let's see. There's the old man, Kevin Perkins. Matt, do you know why we call him the old man? Why is that? Well, because he started losing his hair in the 10th grade. Yeah. So we started calling him old man in the 10th grade. George Kosser, how are you? I met a fraternity brother of yours. So I ain't just telling you, no need to get up out of your chair or anything. Sandra Mendonca from Searcy, Arkansas. Deanna Kilpatrick, good afternoon to you. Chris Comer, how are things there? How are things? Yvonne Palmer, what are you painting? Did you paint something for Thanksgiving? Tammy Nance and Shenandoah Valley. Yes, we love Tammy Nance. Heather Olson, no elk this year. No elk. Well, Heather, we appreciate, even though you're probably hungry now because y'all didn't get an elk, we appreciate you joining us all the way from Utah. Okay, we are celebrating Thanksgiving. So Thursday is Thanksgiving. Friday is Black Friday. Then the next Monday is Cyber Monday. What is today? What do you think? It's we could cry about something and call it Tearful Tuesday. I don't know, it's kind of Thanksgiving Adam, because tomorrow's Thanksgiving Eve. So, okay. All right, but first the recitation of the greatest Thanksgiving line ever. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. Now, if you don't get that reference, you seriously need to watch the Thanksgiving episode of WKRP in Cincinnati. It's the best Thanksgiving show that a sitcom has ever done, ever. And so we even, since Little M did not recognize that reference, we showed her that episode just as far as helping along her cultural literacy. So even played her the song. I'm at WKRP in Cincinnati, too. Man, I don't know why singing makes me cough. Lately, it's a good thing I'm not a singer. I hope reading doesn't make me cough. So, are you ready? We've got two thankful stories. One is not a typical Thanksgiving story. The other one is our traditional Thanksgiving story, but they are both from Sawyerton Springs, and I wrote these a while back. And the first one is going to be a Thanksgiving story that is a Thanksgiving story because it provides something to be thankful for. It's just it's a story about friendship. How about that? And being thankful for friends. It's called The Treasure of the Oak. When lightning hit the big oak tree behind Norman's Groceteria, everyone in town woke up. No one immediately knew what had been struck, but there was no question that something had taken a direct blow. As Charles Raymond Floyd jumped out of bed, his first thought was that Cabell Outlaw had finally blown up his gas station. Charles Raymond has warned Cabell for 20 years about smoking near the pumps. Shaking the cobwebs from his head, however, he quickly realized that what he had heard had been closer than Cabell Station. Liz Reed screamed in her sleep when the lightning struck. The combination of the boom and her reaction to it propelled her husband Max toward the ceiling. When he hit the floor, he was in his pants. They were on backwards, but they were on. Frozen in a karate stance, Max was ready to fight. Exactly who? He was not yet awake enough to decide. Jeff Durham was parked in front of Henley's Hardware when the storm came up. As the lightning and thunder grew worse, he drove his patrol car toward home. Passing Norman's on the left, he saw a flash in his rearview mirror and thought the store had been hit. But as he wheeled around for a better look, he saw the Groceteria was fine. The tree, on the other hand, was split right down the middle. Straining to see through the rain, Jeff directed his headlights toward the old tree. From what he could tell, there was no fire to take care of. It was raining too hard for that. But come morning, there would be a lot of cleaning up to do. Jeff parked and waited under the overhang at Norman's for the rest of the guys he knew would soon arrive. In a town like Sawyerton Springs, all the emergency services operate on a volunteer basis. There is a volunteer fire department, a volunteer ambulance crew, and of course, Jeff is the volunteer policeman. As loud as that was, Jeff thought, everybody will be here. He was right. It didn't take long for Charles Raymond and Max to show up. They were joined by Billy Pat Williams, Dr. Lee Payton, Kevin Perkins, and Norman, who opened the store and made coffee for everybody. I built a treehouse in that tree when I was in the 4th grade, Lee said as he poured coffee for Kevin. This is kind of sad. My granddaddy built a treehouse in it too, Charles Raymond said. Kevin tore open a packet of sugar. That oak and the General's oak over by Bowman's Pond are supposed to be the oldest trees in this part of the state. More than 400 years old, they say. Who's they? Norman asked. Oh, you know, Kevin replied. They. Everybody. Seriously, this tree is over 400 years old. Well, it's been here as long as the town has, that's for sure, Billy Pat said. Jenny has a drawing my great-uncle gave her of Main Street and College Avenue in 1852. The tree's on it, plain as day, and it was big then. 400 years old, Max said, shaking his head. Well, we'll be cutting it up for firewood tomorrow. See you guys about 8? They nodded, and after talking a while longer, drifted back home. The next morning, the lack of darkness and rain made it easier to see what had happened, but it was no less tragic. The lightning bolt had taken the old tree right in the main crotch and literally split the trunk in two. One half remained upright as if nothing had touched it. "Is there any way to save this part that's standing?" Charles Raymond asked Kevin as they walked around the tree. Kevin shook his head. "No. Too much trauma to the whole system," he answered. Kevin was about to pull the cord on his chainsaw when Jeff yelled, "Hey, you guys, come look at this." He was pointing to a place in the main trunk about 15 feet above his head. As they gathered around to look, Jeff said, "It looks like glass." Protruding about 3 inches from the white, shiny wood that had once been the middle of the tree was the rounded edge of something, and it did appear to be glass. Upon closer inspection with the ladder, the object was determined to be just that. It was a greenish-colored jar, and there was something in it. Examination of the tree explained how the jar became entombed in the first place. Someone, years ago, had evidently placed the jar into a hollow in the tree and neglected to retrieve it. As the years passed, the tree simply grew around the jar, and only the lightning of the night before revealed its secret. The rest of the morning was spent carefully sawing and hacking the wood away from the jar. It was lunchtime when Billy finally separated wood and glass and held up the jar. The 30 or so people who had gathered to watch cheered. "Should we open it now?" he asked. "Yes, do it," they urged. Throughout the morning, among the gathering crowd, speculation as to what the jar contained had reached a fever pitch. The consensus of the group was treasure. Exactly what kind of treasure was a source of disagreement. Sue Carper thought it might be Native American gold, but Jerry Anderson, who is Choctaw, assured her that if his ancestors ever had gold in the first place, they wouldn't have stuck it in a tree. Several people agreed with Pastor Ward's theory that it was probably money from a bank robbery. However, no one was able to remember any bank that had been robbed. Moonshine, gold, fishing worms, and a murder weapon were all discussed as possibilities. But when the lid was pried off the jar, there were only 3 pieces of paper inside. The first piece was a picture of Mac and Edna Sawyer, the original couple to settle near the Springs in 1838. The picture was dated 1864. Also in the picture were their daughters Joyce and Barbara and their son Thomas. The second piece of paper was a plat of the town. As Billy Pat carefully unfolded it, he saw areas that were shaded and marked Sawyer. The largest shaded area was the part of town in which most of the present businesses were located. The final document to be extracted from the jar was a deed. The deed gave ownership of the shaded areas on the plat to any male directly descended from the union of Mac and Edna Sawyer. Any Sawyer land, according to the document, was to be surrendered upon demand. Furthermore, the deed provided for unauthorized sale of the property by demanding lease payments of $100 per year for interim use. It was signed by Mac Sawyer and notarized by Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederate States of America. As they all pushed in to see the amazing contents of the jar, Jeff said, "Good gosh almighty, if that deed weren't so old, Kevin Perkins would own this town." Everyone laughed. It was common knowledge that Kevin was the only living descendant of the founders. "Yeah, that'd be a pretty good deal," Kevin said, chuckling. "I've always wanted to own my own town." Suddenly, Max spoke up. He peered over his glasses and said, "Actually, Kev, I think you do." While everyone had been joking about the deed and its implications, Max had been reading the fine print. Max looked at the crowd, noticed their opened mouths, and continued, "Knowing what I do about the law and having studied Confederate land holdings in college, there's little doubt what has happened here. Mr. Sawyer had this particular deed signed by his president toward the end of the Civil War. If you know anything at all about history, you know that deeds of this type were upheld by federal courts when the Union was preserved. So what does that mean to us, Max? Charles Raymond asked. Well, Max said slowly, it means that just about every business in this town each owes Kevin around $130,000 for use of property, which, by the way, is still his. They blinked, then looked at Kevin, who said, I don't take MasterCard and I don't take American Express. All that afternoon, the town was in an uproar. The deed was the only topic of discussion. Kevin, as the president of Perkins Construction, had built almost every home in Sawyerton Springs. Now he apparently owned them all as well. Everyone had an opinion about the situation. Lee Payton said that he was inclined to ignore it, but Charles Raymond pointed out that Lee's home was not among those in question. Easy for you to ignore it, he said. Jeff offered to arrest Kevin on some trumped-up charge and just get him the heck out of town. But no, they decided there was Glenda and the children to think about. Miss Luna Myers told everybody she saw this was of the Lord. His hand, she said, chopped that tree in half to reveal his will to us. I suppose you could see it that way, Pastor Ward remarked, nodding toward the church. I just hope the Lord realizes he gave Kevin his house too. Meanwhile, Kevin had not indicated whether he intended to hold anyone to the terms of his newly found windfall. In fact, he had not been around town all afternoon. Being a contractor, he was busy inspecting Peg Harvey's lightning-damaged home outside of town. Peg was a widow with 3 children, and now her home, which was barely adequate to begin with, had a hole in its roof. I can pay you a little at a time, Mr. Perkins, Peg told Kevin as he surveyed the damage. I have several sewing jobs coming up. We'll get it done tomorrow, Peg, and don't you worry about where the money's coming from. I don't think this will cost anything. Kevin left her standing there with tears running down her face. As he cranked up his truck, he hoped someone would be of a mind to help Glenda if one day something happened to him. By the next evening, Peg's roof was fixed. There was a new oven and freezer inside the house. The freezer was filled to the top with food. Peg's children were wearing new clothes and each had a new winter coat. Peg had enough sewing jobs to last a year, as well as extra material for several dresses of her own. Back in town, the people of Sawyerton Springs went to bed that night, having bought their property back from Kevin for $35 each. When he explained the purpose of the transaction, many townsfolk argued that their land and homes were worth more and insisted on making up the difference. There was even enough left to start a college fund for Peg's kids. What a great place to live, Kevin said to Glenda as he turned out the light, and he swung the covers over both of them as he said, even if I don't own it anymore. So, we're thankful for our communities, our towns, our friends. And now, a Thanksgiving story, which is a foul day, ends with Thanksgiving. Everyone around the dinner table smiled as Pat Ward put the last dish in front of him. I know it's not much. The whole family laughed out loud. That statement had been made by Pat every Thanksgiving of their lives. Actually, there was enough food to feed an infantry division, but she always worried there would be some poor soul who didn't get at least 5 helpings of everything. This year, she had prepared the dressing a day earlier than usual to give her more time with the grandchildren, but she only used that time to expand the menu. Besides the turkey and dressing, Pat had baked a ham, 3 pumpkin pies, and a sweet potato casserole. She made fried corn, cranberry salad, squash, rolls, butter beans, and 3 kinds of peas. There was a time when family members would jokingly mention a favorite dish during the days before Thanksgiving. This was only a game, a challenge to see if their suggestion would end up on the table. It always did. They felt guilty about that last year when Pat cooked 6 different entrees and 11 desserts. So this year they kept quiet. "Wade, please say grace," Pat directed as everyone bowed their heads. "Certainly, dear. Let us pray." And as they all closed their eyes, he began. "Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you on this day of Thanksgiving with gratefulness in our hearts." Wade paused. "This is ridiculous," he thought. "How can I even say that? I don't feel grateful at all. I shouldn't even finish this prayer." But he did. Pat's husband, Wade, is more commonly known around Sawyerton Springs as Pastor Ward. He's led the flock at Bowman's Pond United Methodist Church for well over 2 decades now, but lately it's all been seeming a bit much. It's not that he's old. He isn't. "I'm just tired," he told Pat this morning, "and frustrated. I've had it. It's not necessarily the church," he tried to explain, "or Rotary Club, or my city council duties, or the grandkids. It's just everything. I've had it." Pat understood. Lately, she had kind of had it too. There at the dinner table, Wade sliced the ham and looked at Pat's Uncle Frank. Uncle Frank was 74 years old and sort of a know-it-all. Uncle Frank also knew a million jokes, and as Wade finished the ham and started on the turkey, he told another one. Another stupid joke, Wade thought. "So there's these cowboys," Uncle Frank was saying, "and as they rode into town whooping and shooting, there's this dog right in the middle of the street. One of them cowboys shot him in the foot. A couple of days later, the cowboys was in the saloon. They was drinking and cussing and playing cards, and all of a sudden," Uncle Frank's eyes got big, "all of a sudden a shadow fell over the saloon. As the cowboys looked up, they saw the dog walking through the swinging doors. He had on a gun belt and a hat pulled down low over his eyes. A cowboy said, 'What do you want?' And the dog says, 'I've come to get the man that shot my pa.'" Everyone screamed with laughter. "I've come to get the man that shot my pa," Uncle Frank said again, banging his head on the table. "You get it, son?" he asked Wade. "You get it, don't you? I've come to get the man that shot my pa." Wade forced a smile. "I get it, Uncle Frank," he said. "Would you like some turkey?" Wade had driven all the way to Foley to pick up Uncle Frank earlier that afternoon. He had missed the first quarter of the Dallas-Detroit game because Uncle Frank insisted on leaving the house at 2 sharp. No reason and no way to talk him out of it. Before he even said hello, Uncle Frank had asked, "Son, if Patty Duke married Gomer Pyle, what would her name be?" Wade shrugged. "Patty Duke Pyle." "Get it? Duke Pyle. Patty Duke Pyle." On the way to the house, sandwiched between the jokes, Uncle Frank had asked Wade why he was driving a 12-year-old car. "It was a piece of junk when you bought it," he said. "It's what we can afford, Uncle Frank," Wade had answered, but inside he had been seething. As the family ate and talked, Wade thought about the car. Uncle Frank had been right. It was a piece of junk when he bought it. Billy had told him as much when he sold it to him. "It will need repairs now and again," were Billy Pat's very words. "I'm 53 years old, Wade thought. I should not be driving a 12-year-old car. Pat's 48. She's never had a car of her own." For the 3rd year in a row, the church elders had voted down a $1,500 raise in their pastor's salary. Late Monday, Roger Luker had come to tell him in person. "We just felt that the money would be of better use to foreign missions," Roger said. "After all, there are a lot of poor people overseas. And besides, it's not like you have to make house payment. The church owns the parsonage." Wade drifted back into the conversation on the giggles of another joke. So there's this fat lady stuck in the window of the church, and when the guy in the devil costume walked around to ask questions, she said, "Mr. Devil, don't hurt me. I've been going to this church for 40 years, but you know I've been on your side all along." As everyone howled, Wade thought, there's probably some truth in there somewhere. Through dessert, Wade wondered if his church members cared more about poor people they didn't know than they did about his family. That's right, Wade said to himself. You do own the parsonage. Where are we supposed to live when I retire? Or am I just supposed to preach till I'm 100 and keel over on the pulpit? Why can't I buy my wife new dresses, or a diamond ring, or a new car? And about the car we're driving now, one more year and the engine will die. Then the floor will fall out and I'll be driving around town like Fred Flintstone. After dinner, the family helped clean up while Wade tried to herd Uncle Frank into the car. If I can get him out of here, Wade said to Pat, then I'll have something to be thankful for. Uncle Frank's jokes were becoming a blur, and Wade easily tuned them out as he drove. The kids were on his mind. They were always after him to do something. Daddy, fix this. Daddy, can you and Mama keep the children? Daddy, we're a little short this month. The city council thing was bugging him too. He hadn't even wanted the position, but everyone begged him to take it. They said, you will be a moral voice for the community, Wade. Please help us. Now they were all mad because he had voted no to having liquor at the Christmas party. What did they expect? After Wade walked Uncle Frank to the door and listened to 4 more jokes, he got back in his car and drove. Had he gone straight home, this story might have ended here, and in not too happy a fashion. But Wade didn't go home. It wasn't until 2 a.m. the next morning that he rolled into his driveway. Pat had been frantic, but she knew her husband too well to push him for answers. She was relieved he was safe and glad to see that he was smiling. It was the first time she'd seen him really smile in days. Wade apologized for worrying her. He said he hadn't meant to be so distant or to snap at her as he had done lately. He kissed her, looked at her, and kissed her again. Then he went to bed. Pat might never have known what happened that night that caused such a change in Wade had she not found the letter. It was in a bottle floating near the bank in Bowman's Pond. Pat was raking leaves behind the new church when she saw it. Reaching the bottle with the rake, she unscrewed the cap, fished out the letter, and read, Dear God, it doesn't feel like Thanksgiving. At least I don't feel very thankful. In fact, I am fairly ticked off. If you ask me about what, I'd say everything. I'm so preoccupied with the things that are going wrong in my life, I'm having a hard time seeing the bigger picture. I'm going to sit here by this pond until you remind me of 10 things I have to be thankful for. And please do it fast. Pat is going to kill me for being late. Number 1, I have Pat. She loves me even when I'm being a jerk to her relatives like I was today. People on the street. Country in the world. 6, I can see and hear and walk and talk. These are things I rarely consider, but they're a priceless gift. 7, I have the opportunity to help people who are hurting. It is amazing how much good an encouraging word can do. 8, I have the seasons. They are a constant reminder of change. After the winter in my life, there is always springtime. I have my children and grandchildren who depend on me. That's an honor, and I've learned to be dependable. 10, I have music, trees, a good bed, a pond to fish in, my health, a car that does in fact run, clothes to wear, time with my family, and in Uncle Frank, I have an unlimited source of jokes for my sermons. Thank you, Lord, even for him. Wade. I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. Just hug your friends and family. Make lists of the things you have to be grateful for. And I'll see you after Turkey Day. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.